Okay. Good morning, everybody. It's Rebecca Jennings here, Principal Client Advisor at Global Reviews. Thank you very much for taking the time to dial into our webinar this morning. What we're going to do this morning is talk you through some of the latest results from the Sales and Marketing Effectiveness Benchmarks recently conducted in Irish health insurance market. We're going to look at the implications for Irish health insurers in terms of how consumers find brands, how consumers make decisions between brands, and how brands can help consumers make those decisions and increase their chances of conversion, so through the marketing and sales funnels. So very quickly this morning, what we're going to do, I'm going to touch on who Global Reviews are for those of you on the line who have not heard of us before. I'm going to talk about two particular products, the DME and the DSE, two research programs that cover the marketing and sales effectiveness parts of the consideration, consideration and act process. So what does the digital marketing effectiveness research tell us about how Irish consumers are choosing a health insurance provider? How are they researching? How are they choosing a final provider? And then what does the digital sales effectiveness program tell us about how providers can support this research choice most effectively and, as I say, increase the propensity of consumers to convert on their website? So we're going to talk through the decision and act cycles, and then obviously what overall does this mean for Irish health insurers going forward. So just to introduce who Global Reviews are, we are at heart a leading international data, analytics and advisory organization operating across a number of territories, and we do three things exceptionally well. Firstly, we measure, track and optimize the effectiveness of both marketing and digital strategies for our clients, revealing more about our clients' target consumers than they could possibly know otherwise through our various digital sales, digital marketing and mobile sales effectiveness programs. Secondly, we can provide tactical and e-commerce insight to our clients to have a direct, measurable and positive impact on their online sales conversions and their loyalty going forward. Thirdly, we run the largest program of direct sales and marketing research, and that enables us to really understand and have set best practice standards across our clients' organizations internationally. We have an incredible history of this kind of research, a lot of in-depth expertise, both from the program of thousands of consumer interviews and hundreds of consumer benchmarks, hundreds of brand benchmarks per year, combined with the internal expertise that we have. As I say, this is who we are, and it's just a brief summary of some of the brands that we work with across the UK, Europe, and Australia. What we're going to talk about specifically today, of course, is the Irish health insurance market, a market we've been working in for a few years now. And we're going to talk about two of those key pieces of research that we conduct in that territory and the impact and the influence has on the Irish health insurers and what it means for health insurers in the market. We're going to look at the marketing effectiveness, the DME, and that is very much at the beginning of consumers' discovery and consideration phases of the purchase cycle. So the DME looks at how easy consumers find you when they're looking for a brand to buy health insurance from. How do they make decisions on which brands to research, to shortlist for further reference, and then to finally choose who's gaining customers, who's losing customers in that research, in that customer process, and what you can do to increase your chances to getting onto their final consideration set. Then we're going to look at how that fits in with the sales effectiveness. And obviously these are intrinsically linked pieces of research, because the sales effectiveness looks at how effective your own website is at engaging customers and helping them match their needs to your products and services. How can they find a service on your website that really suits their needs? And then the ACT phase looks at how easy is it for them to actually purchase that from you. So we're going to look at those three phases of the Irish consumers' consideration process when they're looking for health insurance. These, as I say, are two studies that they're actually run separately, although as you can see they have a close alignment and they're very useful when used together. In fact, they're most effective when used in combination. The digital marketing effectiveness study is an open screen study, so consumers are in their own homes at their own computers. At the moment this is done primarily across laptops and desktops, although we're moving into the mobile space, and we have moved into the mobile space with the sales effectiveness program. But at the moment the digital marketing effectiveness research we're going to look at here was conducted, say, in people's own homes on their laptops or desktops. They download a little program that tracks everything they do onto their browser, so we know how long it takes them to do things, where they go, which sites they visit, how long they takes them to do things, and then we obviously ask them questions about the research process as well. It's a national study. It usually takes around 200 participants in the market, but they are qualified as being consumers who are prepared or to look at, or who are ready to choose or switch providers for the nominated products in the next 3 months. So it's a national study. They're representative of the market, but they are representative of people who are looking to research this product already, so they are target consumers. There is then the opportunity to add consumers that fit your own target profile if required. So you can add another 50 that are specifically of a specific age, a specific demographic, if that is of interest. And as I say, this is a blank screen study taken in a natural buying environment, pre and post research questions, as well as behavior tracking. So we ask some questions about their initial preference for brands. Do they come in with any preconceptions? Which brands they're aware of? We then track their decision path as they go through their research. Well, who do they visit? Which sites do they visit? Which research sites? Which search sites? Who do they then shortlist? Which brands might make onto their shortlist for future, for more in-depth research? And then their final, at this point, do you have a preferred brand? Who would be that preferred brand? So this effectively gives us a short list of brands, and we can understand how people make that shortlist, and then it gives us a list of preferred brands, and we can understand how consumers make that list. So for each brand, we get this funnel, essentially, of who visits you, who shortlists you, who prefers you, and why. Why do they do that for your brand? And of course, why do they do that for every other brand in the market, for the competitors' brands? So we can contrast different brands in the market as to why they make the shortlist, why they make the last preference. The sales effectiveness piece, which we're going to talk about also, is actually the next step, as you saw in the consider and act decision process. And the sales effectiveness research effectively follows on from the marketing effectiveness. Sales effectiveness looks at your own website. So it will take consumers, a set of consumers, to your website. It's a different set of consumers for each site we benchmark, because the tool, the product, the digital sales effectiveness is a benchmark that looks at all the competitors in a market. So there might be 4 or 5 in this particular market. In other markets there might be 8, 9, 10, 12, depending on how many big brands there are in a market. But it's a benchmark that enables you to look at your own performance against your key competitors. So a number of consumers are asked to undertake some tasks on your website, and then there is also a very extensive best practice audit that is conducted by the internal experts at Global Reviews, and I'll touch on that again in a moment. But what it does, it breaks down the journey that a consumer will naturally take when looking to purchase a product, that consider and act phase, into another set of steps to allow for much deeper dive analysis into the individual elements of the experience of what users do at each stage. So there's a whole set of questions and tasks around initial engagement. Do you, on the home page and the product pages, draw people in? Does it look as if you're going to suit their needs? Do they even look at the pages and go, I want to go any further? How effective are you at introducing the options that they have? How can they evaluate those options to meet their needs? How do you then encourage them over that line at the end? Once they've got a price, they've got a product, how do you push them and say, okay, now's the time to make that purchase. Why would they buy with you? Why would they buy online? Why do they buy offline? What are the advantages through the channel selection piece? And then, of course, looking at the application form itself. So the DSE looks at your own website and how you can improve this journey for consumers. Overall, there's around 500 data points that go into the DSE, and they come from 4 different sources. They come from the tasks that consumers are asked to undertake themselves. So go and research this product, go and find a product that suits these needs, go and find a price for this. And we can measure their effectiveness and their success at each point. We asked some attitudinal questions about what did you think of that process? Was it satisfactory? Were you expecting it to be easier or harder than it was? We then asked them some audit questions about features and functions they would expect to see, and what do they think of the features and functions of the website itself. So there's a bunch of data that comes from the customers. Then there's normally around 350 data points that come from this best practice audit, and this harks back to the point I was making about who are we. We have the biggest program of sales and marketing research out there, and have had for many years. We've been doing this for around 15 years across a number of territories. We have a tremendous amount of internal expertise and understanding of what consumers want in the marketing and sales process. So we have an audit that is conducted by our internal experts. It's a yes-no audit. There's no scope for subjectivity. It's not, do I like that color? It's, does the site have, does the site have, does the site do, does the phone number have opening hours, et cetera, et cetera. So all of that data is combined at each of those consider and act phases to come up with scores at each step to help brands really understand where they are succeeding and, obviously, most importantly for the research generally, failing in terms of supporting consumers across the consider and act phases, why consumers are dropping out of the website in their research process, why they're dropping out of the application form. So we're going to talk about both of these research. We'll look at insight from both of these research here. So we're starting at the beginning of that discovery, consider and act phase we saw earlier, start at the beginning of the DME, and we'll try to understand how people are making decisions in terms of which brands to go with, and then the DSE will tell us what brands are doing on their websites to help support that decision process, or often not. Interesting, I think, always to start with, what do consumers think is the most important thing when they start their research for health insurance? So before they even started their research, what do they think is most important to them when they're actually looking for a new health insurance provider, either to take out for the first time or to switch from an existing provider? Could be a company provider, for example, could be an existing personal provider. So what is the most important thing? Interestingly, what you can see there is the most important thing is the suitability of the policy for my specific needs. We're not looking here at a graph that's showing us that cheap is the most important. Obviously, low fees and charges are very important, and trust very important. But actually, what's top of consumers' minds at this point is the suitability of policy for their specific needs. So that's interesting when we come in to look at how the sites perform and what people are looking for later and how they're making their decisions, because it's not so much about where all low prices it's not a pure price play. Consumers are interested, obviously, in getting a good price, but it's got to suit their specific needs. They've got to come away from the process thinking, okay, I've got something that actually suits my needs. So, do they come into the process with a strong pre-preference? What kind of existing thoughts have they got about the brands in this market? So we asked which companies would they initially prefer before conducting research. Now, 57% didn't actually have a preference at this point. That's actually quite high. We often find in a lot of these markets that that's down about 30%, that about 60–70% of our consumers already have a preference. So that's interesting. The first thing that a fair amount of the market actually at the moment is fairly open-minded in terms of who its health provider might be, or perhaps it reflects a slight lack of awareness of some of the brands in the market. So 57% didn't have a preference. The leading brand at this point, as you can clearly see, is VHI, with 21% of our consumers saying, okay, if I had to make a choice now, that would be the one I would go with. And then there's obviously a bit of a drop back to Aviva and Leia, and finally Glow Health. But as I say, it's an interesting impact, already an interesting point at this point, because you've got a market that actually is quite open to be persuaded into a brand. It's not coming in with a huge amount of existing being swayed towards a particular brand. There is an interesting influence as we go through, see, in terms of once they actually make a decision in terms of who do they trust and who have they heard of. But at the minute, when they come into the process, they're fairly open-minded. So what do they do? Well, 70–80% of them unsurprisingly start at a search engine. Now, I say unsurprisingly because that's pretty much the pattern we see in most of the DMEs that we do. A tremendous amount of consumers automatically gravitate towards a search engine, even if they know a brand to go to. If they know what the URLs they want to go to, they still type into a search engine. It's such ingrained behavior now. But again, it shows the power of that as an existing gateway for brands, and we'll see later how important it is in terms of getting brands into people's awareness and perhaps even into the shortlist stage. So a lot of consumers going from the search direct to a brand website, so that's 46%, but as I say, a vast majority of them starting at a search engine. So taking that a step further, where do they go in terms of brands after that? 53% actually visited the Aviva site. 47% visited VHI, 41% visited Leia, 47% visited VHI, 41% visited Leia, and 24% visited Glow Health. So you can see immediately we start to see changes in the brands that in people's activity. We saw that VHI was the biggest preferred brand at the beginning, but actually people are now thinking at this stage, after a bit of research, oh, I'll go and visit Aviva, they look interesting. Perhaps there's something come up on the search engine, a good call to action has come up on the search engine, and made people think actually that might be a possible competitor for the brand I already think of as my preferred. But obviously also we saw the 57% didn't have a preference. So they're out there and they're researching. And at the moment, say whatever Aviva are doing is pushing people through to visit the site. In terms of getting onto shortlists, so once we've done some research and they're thinking, okay, well, who now makes it to the point where I'm going to do some actual further research, perhaps go in and get a full quote. I've done a quick quote, and now I'm going to go spend some time put into the full quote process. It is interesting. You've certainly got VHI, Aviva, and Leia making it onto the shortlists of at least 2/3 of our consumers. And Glow Health lagging somewhat at 34%, although you've got to remember at the beginning they had a very low initial preference. So actually in terms of getting onto shortlists from people who didn't prefer them at the beginning, who they obviously have the detriment, if you like, of coming into the market without a huge groundswell of existing awareness and existing preference. That's pretty good because, again, this obviously shows there's a lot of research. People are being convinced by the research that they're doing at this point. So things like search engine strategies, also things like initial engagement on the website at this point are going to come into play. Are Glow Health doing a good job in terms of initially convincing consumers that they might be a brand that would be good to research? So while overall it's a small number, I think it shows that they're actually batting above their weight a little here. And then you've got VHI, Aviva, and Leia, so the bigger players in the market, getting onto the short lists of 2/3 of consumers. What we also see, and we also see this in pretty much every market we do, people will shortlist without visiting, and that's obvious for all of these brands, because some brands just have a legacy opinion in people's minds. They might not have chosen them at the beginning as their preferred brand, but they will know that when I'm buying health insurance, I will just put Aviva on the shortlist because they're out there. I don't know much about them. I'm not in a position to prefer them now, but I just know of them, and I know that they're good enough that I would put them on the shortlist. So we always find that the percentage of people who shortlist brands is higher than those who visit it. And as I say, that's actually two things at play there. There is that legacy, well, that's always going to make my shortlist because it's just such a big brand. I'd be foolish not to research it. But also you've got that sort of search engine and research page, research brand, research site power going in there as well, where people are seeing them on research sites or seeing the messages on search engine going, oh, actually I will shortlist that brand because that's an interesting message for me. I don't at this point have to visit the brand, but it has convinced me in that message that I should shortlist it. So you've got two things going on here, as well as the power of the introduction of persuading consumers that you're a brand that they should consider by the actual visit itself. So that there's multiple reasons why a consumer would push a brand to shortlist. And we can see those here. Obviously, as I say, familiarity with their names is a strong one. People put brands on shortlists because they feel, in some cases, they would be foolish not to. Then you've actually get, also you can see the power of the SOAR, and when I saw a search engine, so the messages that are being communicated using the search tools are very important because that's getting people to shortlist as well. Obviously, good prices and offers are important. But also you can see there, fourth, only just behind that is the website Help Me Compare option. So we're getting now into, is it easy for me to understand what you have that might suit my needs? We're still at a fairly early stage in in-depth research here. People may well not at this point have got a full quote. In fact, they probably haven't. They've looked at the website. They've done a bit of research on Google. They've done a little bit of sort of superficial research. They're still at the point of saying, actually, I don't know exactly what you've got yet, but it looks as if you've got something that will suit my needs. I can compare what you've got easily. So we can start to see the power of that coming through here, and that will come through the DSE as well. So what happens when we actually get to the final stage? And this is really interesting. Up until now, you've seen VHI was the brand most preferred at the beginning. 21%, I believe, of consumers preferred it at the beginning, and Alea and Aviva were down at 10 and 11%. Aviva actually got the highest number of visits, but actually when we get to final conversion, you can see the Alea leapfrogs those two other big brands in the market to become the most preferred provider. 32% of our consumers said, actually, if I had to make a choice now, I would choose Alea. Squeaking just in above VHI at 30%, again, just in above Aviva at 27%, and Glow Health at 8%, as you might imagine, having seen the figures so far. But that's really interesting. So what is going on here? What this means is that Alea has done the most effective job of converting from the shortlist. 48% of people who put Alea on their shortlist finally chose them as their final choice. So almost half of people who put Alea on their shortlist chose them as their final choice. 42% of those who put VHI on the shortlist actually finally chose them. 39% in terms of Aviva, and 24% in terms of Glow Health. So Alea is doing the best job of these brands in the market of taking consumers who've got them to the shortlist, who've got over the first hurdle and said, actually, yes, I'm going to go and look at a price, I'm going to go and look at the products for my needs, I'm going to take that next step. Alea is doing the most effective job of then pulling those consumers over that final line to say, yes, you have a product that suits my needs the best, I trust you, I like the brand. So what are some of the drivers here? Again, what you'll see here, you've got trust. Trust obviously is extremely important in this market. more so in some of the other markets that we research. People are entrusting you with their health. It's incredibly important. There's an underlayer of trust that you will deliver on your promises, because obviously you're buying health insurance. It's a non-physical product. Nothing's going to arrive in the post that people can look at and go, wow, that's a nice, shiny, very exciting insurance policy. They've got to understand from the website that you will meet their claim, that it's easy to meet that claim, and that you will genuinely be there for them. Obviously, there's a legacy of using them before, and that comes into that trust piece. If I had a good experience previously, there's a bit of inertia going on here. But again, then what you'll look at, you've got good policy options, and you've got best policy options for my needs are the second and fourth, very close at the top in terms of drivers for selecting that brand. So again, as we said earlier, there are absolute fundamentals in that consumers must trust the brand. There is always going to be a legacy opinion that I will go somebody I've used before, because it's part of that trust. But increasingly we're seeing this best policy options for my needs, not necessarily the cheapest, but it needs to be the best policy option for my needs specifically. So as a consumer, you need to come away from the process feeling that, okay, I've managed to understand everything that this brand has to offer me, and I know I've got the best one that suits my needs specifically, not just the cheapest or the one that they were trying to sell me. I understand that I've got the one that best actually suits my needs, and we'll see in a moment how effective perhaps some brands are doing that. So what happens at the shortlist stage? We get a lot of, as you saw, a lot of brands put on the shortlist. 70% of people were putting, 67% of people were putting these brands on our shortlist, with the exception of Glow Health. What happens? Why do people shortlist but not prefer? What is that break point? So we find in our research, and we talk to consumers about why this happens, there are a number of reasons. Some of the most important are this lack of reassurance about reliability, trust, value. Why am I choosing you? There's a lot of brands in this market. They're all quite similar as far as the consumer is concerned. The products all look quite similar. I don't understand the differences between the products. Ultimately, what is it about you that makes you different as Aviva, as Leia, as Glow Health, as VHI? What is it about you that I can rely on, I can value, I can trust more than I can trust anybody else? And it isn't, as I say, just a price play. It's about who you are and how I can actually trust you to deliver on these promises you're making. Other things that provide a break point at this point, complicated comparison process. As I say, lack of information about help consumers find a product that suits their specific needs. A lot of the time you will do this, you'll get presented with 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 plans, and consumers will say, I don't know how to compare those. It's really hard to compare them. I've got to look at each of them separately. I can't compare them side by side. I can't take out the ones I'm not interested in. I can't figure out which one of these really will suit my specific need for X, Y, Z. Allied with this is often a lack of obvious access to help and contact details throughout the process. It sounds like a silly thing, but it's really important for consumers when they're making this kind of decision and going through this process, is a underlying constant access to help in terms of both online help, contextual FAQs, but also access to offline support, so phone numbers with opening hours at all relevant decision points, other types of contact information. Where are those on your website, and are you helping consumers find them? And then finally, obviously, there's a complex purchase form issue. Often, obviously, these things tend to be a little bit long, so they're asking a amount of personal detail, but there's an awful lot you can do to help consumers through that process to understand why they're being asked for this information, and again, this access to help. So these all provide sort of break points. They shatter the funnel that we saw at the beginning. People get to the shortlist, but then leak out of the sides of the funnel because these things, these demands are not met. And that is where the DSE, the Digital Sales Effectiveness Tool, comes in, because that looks at the companies and the providers' websites themselves and says, well, okay, this is why you're losing those consumers. This is why they're leaking out of that funnel. This is what you're not doing to keep them in and going through all the way through to completing that online purchase. As I said at the beginning, this looks at 6 different steps in this market. It's either 6 or 7, depending on the market. It happens to be 6 within Irish Health Insurance from initial engagement. So, as we were saying, what does the site do in terms of drawing consumers in and persuading them right from the beginning that this is a site that has a product that suits their needs, that you can trust them, and you can easily go through and engage with them. How easy does the site show you as a consumer what options you have? How easy does it help you evaluate those options in terms of finding one that suits your needs specifically and comparing it to the others? And what does it do then to help you make that decision, so to sort of facilitate that decision or help you make that final decision in terms of help and support and contact, and why choose you as a brand? What is it that pushes that consumer finally over the decision point into which channel should I use to buy? Is it online? Is it offline? Is it easy to do it online? How long is it going to take? What do I need? And then the actual application form itself. So what actually happens in terms of the DSE? The results are scored at each of those consider and act phase, each of those 6 steps. In fact, as we saw earlier, there are 500 data points that all come to add this up together. And what's overall is an overall score of how effective the site is. Often what we find is that there isn't necessarily a huge difference in an industry between scores. You rarely find an industry that scores 65 to 35, for example, and that's sort of what we're seeing here. It's a fairly close set of scores. All I would really say about those at the moment is that what we would generally say is a score of 55% shows that you're just about meeting consumers' needs in this market. And in concert with many, many other markets, this is not unusual, but at present there's a lot that Irish health insurers could be doing to improve the experience that consumers are having and helping, as I say, to plug those gaps between shortlist and final consideration. Specifically, we can see here that there are some industry pains. Industry pains very much about matching options to needs and deciding to purchase. So that's about looking at, can I as a consumer find a product that actually suits my needs? We saw earlier in the DME how incredibly important it was for consumers through the process that they came away thinking, I've got a product that suits my needs specifically. And that is something that the industry does not do well, particularly at all. And again, it's not specifically only the Irish health insurance industry doesn't do this well. Insurance as a whole struggles with this. Insurance products are obviously complex by their very nature. They often have a lot of small print. They have a lot of things that they cover, a lot of things they don't cover. So actually it is a challenge. But I think there are ways of starting to help consumers come away from the process thinking, okay, I've now got the one that really suits my needs. So as I said at the beginning, within the DSE, there is the consumers who are asked to do tasks at each stage, and then that is combined with this internal audit that we do. So one of the tasks that consumers are asked to do is going to find a very specific product. It could be, in this case, it's a cheap health plan that has particular types of product, particular types of coverage. It varies as to when we do the study. Obviously, the tasks change, but the principle is this, not so much specifically what the task is, but we ask them to go and find a very specific coverage plan, as a consumer might do. Generally speaking, in the last wave of research we did on Irish health insurers, nobody did this particularly well. It is an industry pain. How do you convince consumers or show consumers both the breadth of what you have, but also then guide them towards the right product? Key problem here consumers found were they found it very hard to compare all the plans when matching finding a product for their needs. There's just so much out there. It's very hard to figure out what is it that actually suits my needs best. Everybody in the market has a lot of products, a lot of extensive coverage. So how can consumers cut through all that data to find what it is they're specifically looking for? So it's hard to compare. The difference between the plans is difficult to determine. So the navigation is hard to find. Took a long time to find the information. So a number of issues that consumers found on average when looking at across this market. And as I say, this is applicable often to a lot of other insurance markets. As we saw from that data, it's not the case in this particular market we can find the best practice from within the Irish health insurance market, and that's very important to note. The research that we do, as I say from the beginning, one of the key things we do is find best practice within industries across multiple territories. And it may well be the case that actually the best practice for a particular industry comes from outside of your territory. It may sometimes come from outside your industry. Amex, for example, have a very good application form with a lot of internal help, a lot of help and support. So actually, from application form point of view, Amex is actually one of our best practices. Even if you're not a bank or a credit card, it's sometimes really interesting to look at other best practices outside your own territories and outside your own industry. So this is a classic example of where the industry itself isn't doing a great job, but actually there are some good examples from other territories that we can look at, and that is the advantage of global reviews. So health.com.au, obviously an Australian health provider, takes a nice approach to this. So it starts by asking consumers a couple of things about their priorities: single couple, family, single parent. What are my priorities? So starting a family, I'm having some more children, I've got family with teenagers, or I want to build my own. And then you get presented with some of the top options for those needs. So if you're a young couple and don't want to pay for things like IVF and obstetrics, here are some 3 offers for you. Explicit says what you're paying for, but what you're not. Very important to make it clear to consumers what it is you are and are not getting at this point. And then you can see there are 3 distinct coverage levels being offered. That doesn't mean consumers can't find and look at others. It just means that they're making that little step to say, this is what we've got, this is what it's covered, this is what you get for this level of cost, and a very easy way of comparing things against each other. Again, considering a family gets you a different set of comparative tools. Taking it another step, NIB, again, in Australia, looking at the same market, but again, a slightly different approach, but again, very much more intuitive in terms of making some selections at the beginning. What am I specifically looking for? Family, singles, couples, hospital extras, hospital only. The table is dynamic, so as you play with those, the table will change. Then you can see you've got some 5 different options up here with very clearly laid out tick boxes and crosses down the page to say what do I have, what do I not have. It's possible to take away those options by clicking the little X at the top to say, actually, I'm not interested in that, that's too expensive, that's too cheap, that's not what I want. So as a consumer, you're more likely to end this process by coming away thinking, oh, no, actually, I have found the product that suits my needs. I haven't created a product from scratch. That's not what I've done. That's not what I'm being able to do. And often that's actually a complex tool in itself. But what I have done as a consumer is I've been enabled by the website to cut through the incredible amount of research, incredible amount of products that they have, and I have found the one that suits my needs specifically. I've had a little bit of help in terms of cutting through to start with, and then I've been able to look at each of these products down to the ticks and crosses and make sure they do actually cover what I want. They cover the antenatal classes, they cover the grommets. I've got a family, that's the kind of thing that's important to me. So this is where the DSE will show you why perhaps in some cases consumers are failing to choose a brand because actually they're making this kind of decision very hard. Consumers can't do this comparison, so they're coming away going, actually, I don't think I've got the right product for my needs, even though in many cases the provider probably has a product that suits their needs. They're just making it very hard for consumers to find it and to be sure that they have, because that's the other thing we find. It may well be that consumers can find the product, but actually, because the process to find it was complex and hard and hasn't revealed enough about what the other products are, consumers go, well, I found one that I think sort of suits my needs, but I'm not sure it's the right one, so I'm not going to go for it because I'm not absolutely convinced I've been shown everything that's of interest to me. So it's a balance, but brands need to take that next step in terms of really helping consumers understand that they've got a product that suits their needs. One of the other key breakpoints we saw earlier in terms of shortlist to final decision was this deciding to purchase or facilitating a decision. I've got a product. I found a price as a consumer. I think I'm kind of interested in this, but actually I've got a good one from 2 of your competitors as well. Why am I buying from you when I have 3 plans here, all look very similar, all very similar price? What is it that makes you different? How can I compare across the brands? Can I answer questions? Is there easy access to FAQ, easy access to help, easy access to escalating that offline if I need to? And as I say, what kind of why choose us have you got integrated throughout the site? And again, within this industry, various people do things well. You can see that Leia's got phone number here on the page. You've got Glow Health's got a phone number that's often that permeates through the site, which is great. Some other contact details. But actually, when you get through application forms, some of this is lost. You get through application forms, you will often find that forms don't have access to help, don't have access to FAQ. People have got a question when they're in a form, they're forced to come out and go digging around the site to answer the question. What's going to happen then is they've come out of the process, they've had enough, they've got bored, they've got frustrated, something else has happened, they're moving away from the process, you've lost them, they've come out, they're leaking out of that funnel, essentially. So Aviva in the UK have actually done an awful lot of work on this. They've been clients of ours for a number of years now, and we've been talking to them a lot about this sort of insight, this sort of data, and you will see that in the last 6-9 months they've changed a lot of this sort of information throughout the site. So you will now see things like Contact Us. That is something that you will see throughout the site. It has phone numbers, and often it has other options to contact us. You're never very far from a phone number with opening hours, and that's very important. As consumers tell us, it's very, very frustrating to have a phone number, to ring it up and just get a message that says, okay, we're closed now. That's incredibly frustrating for consumers. Often they're doing this outside of work hours. This is not something you can do particularly in work hours. It's not a phone call you want to have in the office. So it's very important that consumers understand when you're going to be there for them. That's very important. What you're also seeing here, little drip feeds of information that say why you would choose Aviva. Making a claim, for example. This is a page all about how easy is it to make a claim. This is not buried under members. This is information that everybody can find very easily because, again, Aviva understand, in the UK understand that actually that's what people want when they're buying insurance. It's not just when they've got it. They need to understand how to make a claim. It's really important when you're making that decision choice at the beginning, how easy is it to actually get you to deliver on your promises. So over 82% of claims are approved over the phone. Just little drip feeds that makes you as a consumer think, oh, this is going to be easy. It's going to be a simple process. External validation. So it's not just the brand shouting about, well, hey, we're great. It is a third party saying, no, generally this is a good brand. So de facto 5-star private medical insurance mentioned on the sidebar and mentioned in the middle as well. So de facto and then obviously you've got other pieces here, 2 months free, leading no claims discount. So we're looking at helping consumers, say, contact the brand, but also this sort of drip feed, both internal and external validation in terms of why you would choose a brand. HCF in the Australian market actually leads this, and they do a couple of things interestingly. They have specifically why us is linked from every page within one click. They have pieces that sort of motivate consumers to continue on with the process on every page. Again, this external validation, you've got 2 certified sort of value external awards here. So you've got, say, one got an outstanding value, the other one is actually for service. So covering both price and service, and saying, obviously, to consumers saying, okay, it's not just us saying we're good value and we're great at delivering on our claims. It's external validation. But also, there are pages about why you would choose a brand. You get more with us, and also why you would choose private health insurance at all, because obviously they have public hospitals, they have the Medicare service, and they are helping consumers understand where private healthcare helps fill those gaps. Obviously very important as people's budgets are being squeezed. We're not quite out of the recession yet. People are thinking, well, why am I spending money on something that actually it's not compulsory, I don't have to do this. It's not like buying car insurance. It's not like buying home insurance for my house. I don't have to have this. Why would you do it? And then why would you do it with us? So taking that sort of full information to consumers, helping them make that decision, and then obviously looking at the history of the brand and some of the award, again, external validation, customer service excellence. So confirming to consumers that this is a brand that they would be safe doing business with. So what does all this mean for health insurance brands? What does the DME and the DSE overall have to say about health insurance brands in the Irish market? We saw search results playing a strong part in getting to shortlist alongside an existing knowledge of the brand, existing trust of the brand, bringing the brand to mind through call to action brand messages, and search results are extremely important, but also making sure that the site itself follows through on those. It's not very helpful having a search message that says, say, market leading, no claims, clicking on it, and then the website page paying no reference to that call to action, because again, that starts to erode consumers' trust in you. So how do you get to a shortlist? And that's about, as I say, a lot of messaging and coming through on that messaging. User default is often to a brand they know. We saw that at the beginning, but they are being swayed by a good price for a product that suits their needs. You can change consumers' minds if you make sure they are aware that they've got a product that suits their needs. You can get from shortlist to final preference by showing them easily your product options, making it easy for them to be reassured that the product is one that suits their needs, and that you've helped them cut through the intentional amount of information that you've got in terms of finding one that suits their particular needs. And finally, brands need to offer reasons for users to switch that make their offering different. What is your value proposition? Now, this is something we often find brands don't do very well across industries, across the UK, health insurance industries as well. We see a lot of the same pain, a lot of product options, confusion. In the UK market, actually, we're seeing a lot more of a move towards consumers being able to build their own products. And while that hopefully has aims, hopefully ultimately gets consumers to feel they have a product that suits their needs, it is a more complex tool. So we are seeing in the UK market some of these pains as well in terms of convincing consumers they have a product that suits their needs, and why would you as a brand, what makes you different? Brands do struggle a lot to really understand and communicate to consumers in a trustworthy and external validation sort of way that says, why are we different? Why would you move to us? So in terms of what this means overall for brands, as I say, I think it means looking at how overall you communicate the breadth that you have, but how consumers find the individual products that suit their needs. Obviously, within the 50 minutes that I've had today, we've not been able to go into great depth about all of that data that comes within the DSE. Obviously, the DSE has something, as I say, around 500 individual criteria, 500 data points. That gets extremely granular in terms of how we can advise clients in terms of which pages need to be changed, which kind of information on each page. We have heat maps, we have click maps, we have click streams, we have effectiveness. So we have an extreme amount of data and granularity about each website, but obviously we've not been able to have the time to go through that today. Also, there's a lot of bespoke data or data in there that is obviously only shared with clients. We've seen the top line here, and as clients you have access to all of that, and you also have access to the Global Reviews portal where you can go in and look at the data yourself and understand the data, as well as having the support from Global Reviews in terms of a understanding of exactly how the data should be applied to the website and what can be changed to improve the site at each step. So what's upcoming? We have a number of studies in set to go into market in the next 9 months to a year. The DSE and the DME are rolling programs. The DSE is normally done, and in fact the DME are both normally done on a 6-monthly basis. We've just been talking about some Q1 data, so we're looking at Q3 for the next version of both of those, July for the DSE and August for the DME, and then again 6 months after that, Q1 for January and February for DSE and DME again. So a rolling program of 6-monthly research, which enables us to obviously both keep on top of what's going on in the market, keep very recent, very fresh, but also gives us the history to look back on and how things have changed over time, what's improved, what hasn't. So there's an awful lot of sort of background and supporting history here, as well as very fresh research going forward. So thank you very much for your time. It's been very interesting for me to talk to you today. I hope it's been an interesting session for everybody. If you have any questions, I'm happy to take them via email. If you want to talk about the product itself or have any more questions about the DME or the DSE, please do talk to Adam. Adam Dawson is our commercial director in the UK and Europe, and you have his email there, and he'd love to tell you more about the research. Or, as I say, please do email myself with any questions, or if you would like a copy of the presentation. So it just remains for me to say thank you very much for your attention this morning, and I hope it was useful, and it's been very good talking to you. I'm Rebecca Jennings, Principal Client Advisor at Global Reviews, and this has been a review of the DSE and DME for Irish health providers for Q1 2014. Thank you very much for your attention. Goodbye.